Hey, this is the review of the Waves Silk Vocal plugin. Now, I've decided to use the live version since the normal one uses linear phase filters for its reduction and this one uses normal filters. Of course, it is creating less latency, but it uses filters that do introduce some phase shifts. Now, for me, when working with a vocal, something like this, I wouldn't care about it unless I had the same vocal on a parallel track or something like that. If I was just processing the vocal, this would be just fine. The first menu we have right here, the male or female, and you can just click it to swap in between those two. It just decides on many parameters in the background. That's all that Waves gives us as an explanation. I tried to figure it out, but I'm none the wiser after it. So we're just selecting male or female. Since the vocal I'm using for this example is male, I'm going to leave it at male. Now we have the whole frequency spectrum divided into 3 sections. The low goes up to 300 Hertz. The mids is from 300 to 4K. And then the highs from 4K onwards. Now this plugin, unlike other resonance suppressors like Melda Spectral Dynamics or Sooth, can do the same thing, but basically this is in its conception made so it's easier to set up on vocals. Basically you can do this in other resonance suppressors or spectral dynamic plugins. It's just this one is made in a fashion that maybe makes it faster for you to apply any kind of spectral or resonance attenuation. Now for all 3 of these, you have a knob that decides on how hard are we going to be taking out any of the resonances that are detected. And you can bypass or deactivate any of those. Activate them by just clicking this button, and then you have how hard we're going to be taking off the resonances. So let me pull them all down to 0, and let's try to play this vocal and see how hard we can take that out.
Going crazy in the club, yeah. Got the bottles going up.
So you see now we're taking out the lows from this vocal, but only the resonant lows. Now let me show you what that is. So it's this part of the frequency spectrum, but if I turn on this delta button right here, I'm going to be looking at only the attenuated portion of the signal. You see? So only when it's actually attenuated, that's what I'm listening to. I'm listening to the compressed part of the signal only. And we can do the same thing for the mids and the highs by using this. So you see, when I'm not attenuating nothing, I don't hear anything, even though the headphones are on, isolating this frequency band. But with the delta, we're only hearing the part that is being attenuated, just like this. You see, this is what we are removing from the vocal. So you can use delta for all 3 of them, and you can use the headphones to listen to only a certain part of the frequency spectrum. Now, as I said, the knob right here decides on how much are we attenuating. And for the lows, it's fixed between 20 and 300 Hertz. For the mids, you can affect the entire frequency spectrum from 300 to 4K, but we can also limit that to a specific part, just like this. Let's listen to it. So we can attenuate only specific part of all of those. Let's say right here. See, this is what we're taking out. Just this part of the mid frequencies. So you can, in the mids, be more precise on what you want to, let's say, de-resonate. So for the high frequencies, you can see that right there. Let's see what we're taking out. So it seems to me that when this is selected, the entire frequency spectrum from 4K to 12K is being suppressed, which, as I've seen in the manual, should be when this is selected and vice versa. But, it seems to me like those 2 are swapped. So one of them, and what I'm seeing, this one selected as a shelf, is only going to be pushing down on the resonant frequencies. See that? You can actually hear what is being taken out. But when we select the bell, which should be what we're just watching, it should be pushing on the entire part of the spectrum, just like this, from 4K to 20K, just like that. Should be pushing on all of it at the same time. See, much more wide. Now, as I said, killing resonances in any of these frequency spectrum parts, like lows, high, and mids. As I said, you can do that in any other resonance suppressor. It's just this one is set so that you can just like dial it up and just add some on the lows, on the mids, and the highs. Now we have some advanced controls as well. Let's go over the dynamics first. So this final one is showing you the dynamics influence, but we can actually use this fader to apply some dynamics control on top of everything. So this does not affect, the suppression we have beforehand. So this is applying on top of everything dynamics control, like a compressor. And it also has its own makeup, even though you can use this control right here to move at the same time that threshold and makeup, and also this output trim right there. Let me change that back to 0. This is back to 0. Okay, and you can disable it by clicking the dynamics right here. So that, final compression. Again, when clicking on this button, we have additional controls. We have a high pass filter at 60 something hertz. So this is to remove any of the low rumble from the vocal. There is very few vocals that have any content below that frequency. The speed knob decides on how fast all of this reduction is going to be happening. So those are dynamic reductions that are happening right here. So those are dynamic EQ kind of curves being applied, and we can decide on how fast or slow these are going to happen. We have the precision, which is going to make each one of those resonance suppressions really sharp, applying more than just one notch, trying to kill all the resonant peaks that are punching up, or we can make it smooth like this, and it's going to be more smooth. More smooth or more sharp. That's what we can do. And we have an additional button right here that enables an automatic makeup. So for all of these suppressions, it's actually doing an automatic gain makeup so that our vocal volume stays unchanged. So it's actually looking at the RMS on the input, and the output is trying to do the makeup volume as best as it can. We also have a gate, which is really nice, and we can see its effect right here, because if the signal falls under this gate's threshold, it starts affecting it. So we have a kind of an expander that's going to attenuate all the signal below this gate's threshold even further. This is good for silencing any, in-between vocal lip smacks or anything that's happening in between the phrases being sung. And as I said, you can see that suppression happening right here since the signal is below the threshold. When I play it, it won't be anymore.
Going crazy in the club, yeah. Got the bottles going up.
But you see, if I boost it up, every time the vocal becomes quieter than that threshold, see, we start suppressing. And that also has a really, soft knee of its effect. This one does as well, this dynamics processor on top of everything. And finally, we have the mix knob right here, where we can decide if we want to listen to the dry signal or process signal or something in between. So if you wanted to remove some boxiness in the lows, some resonance in the mids, or some sibilance in the highs, this would be really nice and easy to set up all of a sudden. So you just drop this on, decide how much you want to suppress from each one of these, maybe add some dynamics to all of it, and bam, you got yourself a really nice and fast result. As I said, it's not like you can't do this with any other resonance suppressors or spectral dynamics processors, but this is a really nice format. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is this button right here, which allows you to select which part of the spectrum you're going to see right here. And it doesn't actually change any processing. This is just what you're going to be seeing in this graph right here. And I can make this plugin bigger.
Got the bottles going up, yeah. Going crazy in the club, yeah.
There is not too much content after 12K, but if you wanted to see everything up to 20K, you could. This is the default, and it does look nice, like this.
Going crazy in the club.
You can see most of everything that's being, reduced in volume, everything that's being attenuated. So far, I have recorded over 80 hours of lessons to help you become a professional producer. And now, thanks to Levin.org, I can offer them to everyone completely free. Check out the free music production certificate at mixingacademy.com.